rolling along. Chapters 9 and 10 this morning, as we continue our study in Genesis in the book of Origins. And this will be kind of, I hope it'll be an interesting study because we're wrapping up the story of Noah, and then we are moving on to propagating, procreating the rest of the planet, and kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if you all would remember, but in the 1970s, there was this movie starring Charlton Heston called Omega Man. And he was the last human being left. Everybody else had become these zombie creatures, and they were trying to kill each other. But being Omega Man, he was the last man left. And I remember in the movie, kind of, he's moving through the stores in this town, in this, down this main street, and it's empty, and people have left things exactly the way that they, were, coffee on the table or the pot on the stove and such and so forth. And I gotta wonder, was that not a little bit the way that it was for Noah and his family when they got off the ark? When they finally walked onto dry land and there's nobody else around, no other human beings. I mean, just think about what downtown traffic would have been like, or what a change that would have made. It's just kind of interesting to think, what it would have been like to finally exit the ark, be on dry land, and you're the only ones there, the only ones around. And you got a big job ahead of you. I mean, God is telling you that you need to repopulate the planet. And there has to be now the establishment of governance. And we actually see that here in Genesis chapter 9. Or we will see this in Genesis chapter 9. So after the flood, it's a different world. Matter of fact, one of the things we'll see is that in the antediluvial world, or pre-flood world, people were vegetarians. They didn't even think about eating animals. And in chapter 9, God tells them to eat the animals. In the pre-flood world, it appears that people were not afraid of animals, or animals weren't afraid of people. And then in chapter 9, we learned that the animals are going to be afraid of people, that God's going to plant in the hearts of animals and creatures on the earth a fear for humankind. So it's like I said, it's interesting to see the difference between the pre-flood world and the post-flood world. So let's do our customary read through. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 9, and let's get started here. Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, on all the birds in the sky, and on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I gave you green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal, and from every human being too. I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it." Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, "I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth, I will establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the living creatures of every kind. Never again will waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all the living creatures of every kind on the earth." So God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth." The sons of Noah came out of the ark. Who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and laid uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backwards and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what the youngest son had done to him, he said, "Canaan be cursed, the lowest of slaves. Will he be to his brothers?" He also said, "Praise be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died. That is Genesis chapter 9, and there is a bunch in here to talk about. Any initial thoughts or comments about this chapter? All right, let's go ahead and start to unpack this. So back up to verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth." So interesting the way that that's worded. So God blessed Noah. Why did God bless Noah? Because of Noah's faithfulness, because of Noah toughing out 40 days and 40 nights of rain, and then ultimately 300 and what did we say last week? 371 days on the ark, more than a year on the ark. And when there was dry land, God led them out of the ark. And then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth." So it was never God's intention for the earth to be empty. He didn't say, "Look, you guys are it. I'm not doing that again. I don't want you to people the place because, that got messy." No, God said he wanted them to be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. I don't know if God told me that. That's a weighty responsibility. So God, how are we supposed to do that? I'm looking around and I got three sons. Now they're married, but I got three sons, and we're supposed to put people on this entire planet. One of the things that I think is interesting to see is there is a span of time of about 2,000 years between the creation of Adam and Eve and the flood. And I think that because the chapters are so close together, there's not a lot of text in between, that we don't, that's not something that is ingrained in our minds, that there was about 2,000 years time between the creation of mankind, and when God destroyed all of mankind and the animals and the birds about 2,000 years before the ark and the flood and the redo, the start over. Matter of fact, there's a group of Bible scholars who, through a careful reading of the first couple chapters of Genesis, think that this was probably not the first time that God had made creatures like man and other animals, and that they were destroyed, and God started over, which is a strange thought and would take us into a whole different tributary that we don't have time in this study. But that's what Noah and his family, that's what they were faced with, is that they had to reestablish civilization. They had to reestablish the population. They had to become worthy stewards of what God had given them, which was the whole earth. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread you will fall on, the fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, and on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands." So why did God do that? Why did God put fear and dread into all of the beasts of the earth and the birds in the sky, all the creatures that move on the ground, and all the creatures in the sea? Why did he put the fear and dread of humans into them? And it was so animals would not threaten human beings and diminish their ability to repopulate the planet. And still to this day, even in people who are not God-fearing, even in people who don't believe in God, but they believe in science, biologists and such, acknowledge and know that there is a natural fear of man built into the creatures on this planet. And every once in a while, you'll hear that they have to put down a bear, for example, who becomes too familiar and his fear of people has been either diminished or gone away. And I think that that's an interesting thing. So again, God put fear and dread of human beings into the creatures of the planet so that they would not be a hindrance to repopulating the planet. Verse 3, everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. So this is a change, a clear departure. Like I was saying before, the difference between the pre-flood and the post-flood worlds. And one of those differences is pre-flood, man is a vegetarian. Post-flood, God tells man, yeah, you can continue to eat the plants, but you can eat the animals too. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. But, verse 4, but this is the creation of the first dietary law. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. So we are told by God, we are commanded by God not to eat or drink blood of another animal. And when meat is prepared in the kosher manner, it is completely drained of blood. Not partially, but completely drained of blood. And I don't know if you've noticed on the packaging of Hebrew National Franks or, any other meat product, and some will say kosher, and there's a specific symbol, and it has to be certified kosher. And what it means is that a rabbi trained in such things has gone and certified at the plant that the blood of the animal is completely drained before it's butchered. And that's what God is saying. And why? Why would God do that? Well, I think that there's a couple of things going on here. First off, I can tell you that, working in the first responder world as a reserve deputy sheriff, we're told that the really bad stuff, pathogens and stuff, the really bad biohazards are in the blood. And so, we always have to glove up and in some cases mask up in situations where there's a lot of blood. And blood is really the filtration system of the body, whether for humans or for animals, it's the filtration system. And the really nasty stuff, diseases and such, are in the blood. The other reason is that that blood that he's talking about, that God is directing Moses and his family to not drink or eat, is hearkens to the blood of Christ way down the line from then. And how it's not the animal blood that will save you, but it's the blood of Christ that will save you, the blood of Messiah. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it, and for your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. Okay, now,
Perry,
Patrick.
It's kind of ironic, I think, that in most ceremonies by people that are not Christians, that do not follow this, they both drink and eat blood as parts of their worship and stuff. And also sometimes, like the desert tribes in Africa do it because it's both symbolic and also they get water. It's a way of getting fluid. And so it's sort of interesting to me that that kind of worship is 180 degrees away from what God is saying to his people. So,
Yeah, it is interesting. I know in Japan that there is an alcoholic drink where it is sake, and then they take a small black snake that's kind of like a garter snake. They cut off its head, and then they go like this, and they take all the blood and they put it in the shot glass. Yeah, pass. I got a biblical reason to pass, right? Yeah, yep. So this is an important verse here. Verse 5, and for your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal and from each human being too. I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. So what God does in this passage right here, it's actually a very weighty passage because God establishes the sanctity of human life. And when you move further and further away from God, the specialness or the sanctity of human life becomes less and less important. As you move further and further away from God as human beings, the value of human life becomes less and less important. So God establishes here the sanctity of human life. He also establishes the need for governance. He also establishes the need for a court system. He also establishes the need for law enforcement because none of this would be possible without that kind of infrastructure. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. Well, who's going to do that? Who's going to be the leadership? So it actually establishes governance or government on the planet Earth. I will demand an accounting from every animal, right? So again, remember the fear and dread that God instilled into every animal on the planet so that human beings would not be hindered from populating the planet. So God is going to make animals accountable, and then I will demand an accounting of life for another human being. So if a human being takes a life, they're going to be accountable for that life. And in this, God establishes capital punishment. Like I said, this is a very weighty and important passage. And it's one that we frequently read right over the top of, and we don't see all the depth that is here in this. Verse 6, whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind. One of the things that's happening in our modern day world is there are a lot of people that are thinking that human beings are no different than the animals. And certainly when human beings act like animals, it's not hard to see or to begin to think that. But clearly what God establishes is that human beings are not like the animals, because we, not the animals, we are made in the image of God. We are created to be a reflection of God himself. Again, verse 6, whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind. Verse 7, as for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply in the earth and increase upon it. This was the job that God gave to Noah and his sons. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it. Verse 8, then God said to Noah and his sons with him, I will now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. This is, again, huge. This is a huge chapter. It's huge. Why? Because God is establishing his first covenant, his first written covenant with mankind. We call it the Noahic covenant because God made the covenant with Noah. But it lays the groundwork and foundation for every covenant that comes after it. I've done a lot of thinking about, the antediluvial time and then the time right after Noah and his family walk off the ark and what was in existence at the time. And remember that all this time is pre-Torah. It's pre-Sinai. The law has not been delivered to Moses yet. Remember when Cain killed Abel? It was murder, but was it a sin? Had God defined yet what sin was? And from that time, from the time when Cain killed Abel, until this moment, there was no definition of what sin was. But now, God defines it and says that it is wrong to murder another person. Remember that the word sin is an old English archery term that means you missed the mark. You pulled your bow back with an arrow and you let the arrow fly, and when the arrow reached its target, it missed. What's the target? Righteousness. You missed the target of righteousness. You sinned. Here, in this chapter, God defines that it's a sin to murder. He also defines that it's a sin to drink the blood of another animal. Kind of interesting. And then he moves into his covenant promise with Noah and the rest of mankind, where he says that he's going to establish this covenant for all generations. So it wasn't just for Noah and his family, but it was for Noah, his family, and all the other people that were to come. What is this covenant? Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, and all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. This is the covenant. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. One of the other things that God did, and I meant to mention this in the prior verses, as prior passages, is that God established Noah, his family, and all of mankind to be stewards of the animals. I think we've done a terrible job of being stewards of the animals. I think instead we've tried to profit from animals. We've tried to use animals for our benefit. We haven't managed them for their benefit. And I think that we've been very irresponsible with the animals. And I've heard some people who justify things like big game hunting that, well, God gave us all the animals. But that's true, except that we're supposed to be good stewards. And how do you be good stewards? You take care of them and you make sure that they remain healthy, and you do what you can so that they have good and strong lives too. All right, back to the covenant. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. Notice what God doesn't say. God doesn't say, I will never again destroy the earth. Because he will. It's coming. Well, what he says is he will never again use waters of a flood. So he's taking destroying the earth with water, he's taking that off of the table. Says he'll never do it again. One of the interesting facets of God making covenants with people is he marks it and stamps it with a sign. What's the sign of the Noah covenant? You all know. Verse 12. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Here's a question. Before God made the covenant with Noah, did light refract? If you think back to your physics. Before God made the covenant with Noah, did light refract? I don't know. You know that the way that a rainbow is created is that the light of the sun comes through water molecules, and those water molecules refract or split the multiple frequencies, multiple colors of light, split it out into discrete bands of color. Different frequencies of light. Al.
Yeah, didn't you say that it hadn't rained before the flood?
That's right.
So if it hadn't rained, you couldn't get a rainbow.
No, that's right. Rainbows did not exist before the flood. You're right, Al. Thank you. Yep. So again, this is a change between the pre-flood world and the post-flood world. So light had to refract. We don't know if light didn't refract, light of the sun didn't refract before the flood, but we know now that light refracts, and God uses the symbol of a rainbow to signify his covenant, to stamp his covenant with Noah. But that's not all. Verse 15. I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. All right. So I said, notice that God doesn't say he'll never again destroy the earth. What he says is he'll never again use water. He's going to destroy the earth again. But the next time he's going to use fire. So turn with me to 2 Peter. 2 Peter. And we're headed to chapter 3. 2 Peter chapter 3. So almost to the end of the New Testament. Almost. And 2 Peter, not 1 Peter, 2 Peter. And we're going to read starting in verse 3. So these are the words of Peter here that's being recorded. Above all, you must understand that in the last days scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming he promised? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has been since the beginning of creation. Well, we know that that's a lie because there was the flood. But these scoffers here, they're kind of like skipping over that. Verse 5. But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being and the earth was formed out of the water by water. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. And we know when we go to Revelation chapters 21, that the whole earth and the whole heavens, but universe, are burned over to create the new earth and the new heavens. And why does God do that? Because he's purifying the earth and he's purifying the heavens, eradicating sin completely, so that we can step into eternity with God, and there is no sin, there is no separation, there is no death in eternity with God. So yes, God, being true to his word, will never again use water to destroy the whole earth. But he will destroy it, but next time he will use fire. Back to Genesis chapter 9. Verse 16. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all the living creatures of every kind on the earth. Well, this is an interesting statement, because what God didn't say is, whenever you see the rainbow, you will remember my everlasting covenant. He did not say that to Noah. He said, whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So it's interesting that the stamp of the covenant, the mark of the covenant that God makes with Noah, is to remind God of the covenant, the terms of the agreement, that he will never again use water to destroy the earth. What's the difference between a contract and a covenant? We sometimes refer to covenants, the covenants of God, as promises. I think that's true, and it's a little bit of a simplification. The difference between a contract and a covenant: a contract can be breached, canceled, if either party doesn't live up to the terms of the contract, to the agreement. Where a covenant remains in place even if one of the parties does not fulfill the terms of the agreement. You hear the difference? A covenant remains in place even if one of the parties does not fulfill their end of the bargain. Our loving God says, no matter what, even if you don't live up to your end of the agreement, this covenant still remains in place, and I will be faithful. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all the living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all the life on the earth. So this thing about there being a symbol to mark or stamp a covenant, is it something that we see elsewhere in the Bible? Is it something that God does with the other covenants that he makes with mankind? And the answer is yes. We see the Abrahamic covenant, the covenant that God makes with Abraham. What was the sign of that covenant? It was circumcision. What about the covenant with David? What was the stamp of the covenant that God made with David, the Davidic covenant? It was the blessings on David and the kingdom of Israel. What is the stamp of the new covenant? What is the symbol of the new covenant that God made with mankind through his son, Jesus Christ? It's the cross. Some of us like to wear crosses around our necks. And if you ask a person why they wear a cross, a small cross on a chain around their neck, why do you do that? And some would answer, to remind me of what Jesus did for me. Jesus died for me on that cross. And that is true. But that cross is also the stamp and the symbol of the new and final covenant that God makes with mankind. It is the sign, it is the symbol that establishes God's grace for humanity. Just interesting to kind of see the pattern here of covenant and symbol. Verse 18. But the sons of Noah came out of the ark, were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. Now, when we read through, when we did our read through, I don't know if you noticed this, but, in parentheses here in our text, it says Ham was the father of Canaan. Why is this here? And then Moses, writing this down, he kind of like underscores or highlights Canaan again. He says, so here, Ham was the father of Canaan, in parentheses. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who scattered over the whole earth. Noah, well, let's see, shall we go in here? No, I'm going to let it, so back, it's not back, it's forward. I'm going to just mention this quickly, then I'm going to go back. Verse 22, the text reads, Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked. All right, so why is Canaan being highlighted here? I think it's kind of interesting to note this. Remember, Moses is the author of Genesis and the first 5 books of the Bible, right? And the Israelites are now, at this moment, in the desert, headed towards the promised land. And where are they going? To Canaan. So the reason that Moses is highlighting Canaan in the text here is because he's wanting to show the Israelite people that they are going where they belong, and they're going to Canaan. Just kind of interesting that feature is here built into the text, that it's relevant for Moses' initial audience, which was the Israelite people who were still wandering in the desert. Verse 20, Noah, a man of the soil. Okay, so man of the soil means that he was a farmer. So what did Noah do? What did he do pre-flood? He was a preacher and a carpenter. He built the ark. Took him 120 years to build the ark, not a small period of time. So a preacher and a carpenter. But what is he post-flood? He's a farmer. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. That sounds pretty innocuous. Got to have grapes. When he drank some of its wine, so he was enjoying some of the fruits of his labor, when he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and laid uncovered inside his tent. This is interesting to me because some people will say that this is evidence that God-fearers, believers should not drink alcohol, because the thing that ties this weird story together about Noah getting drunk, laying naked inside his tent, Ham seeing him naked and reporting that to his brothers, is that in getting drunk, Noah had sinned. In this case, he had missed the mark. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk. So it wasn't a problem that he drank some of the wine, but he became drunk. And what happened when he got drunk? He laid uncovered inside his tent. So people weren't supposed to show their nakedness to other people. Ham, the father of Canaan, again, that's featured, Canaan's featured, that Canaan came from Ham. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their faces, their father's naked body, and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. What is the big deal? They're family. You know, family sees family members naked. Well, hopefully not all the time, but it happens. So what was the big deal? Ham showed his father disrespect. Ham showed his father disrespect. Would it have been a different situation if Ham would have seen his father naked in the tent and then not mentioned it to his brothers? Yeah, probably. Out of respect for his father, he would have said nothing. Some say, what was Ham doing in the first place looking in his father's tent? That's a little suspect. Regardless, Shem and Japheth, out of respect for their father, took a garment, laid it across their two shoulders, walked in backwards, looking the other way, dropped the garment on top of Noah to cover his nakedness. Verse 24. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of the slaves. The lowest of the slaves will he be to his brothers." Many have asked the question, why didn't Noah curse Ham? And instead, he cursed Ham's offspring. And it was because Noah's curse was not intended to be just for Ham. but all of Ham's future generations. And what was the curse? That Canaan would be the lowest of slaves to his brothers. His brothers? The descendants of Shem and Japheth. Verse 26, Noah, I'm inserting Noah. Noah, he also said, Praise be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem. And may Canaan be the slave of Japheth. So that's the complete curse. Again, the reason that Moses is highlighting Canaan is because they're about to take the land away from Canaan. Canaan was to be the slave of the descendants of Shem and Japheth. Verse 28. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. So he's now a pretty old toad. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died. So Noah lived the better part of his life, two-thirds of his life, let's say, in the antediluvial world. And then post-flood, Noah lived an additional 350 years, and then he died. And we'll start seeing after this point the lifespan of the post-flood peoples begins to decrease and diminish to the point that they are below 120 years, which is what we read about in our study last week, chapter 7 and 8. All right, we are about to reach chapter 10, but we are running out of time. We only have a few minutes left in our study, so I'm kind of thinking that maybe we'll hit the pause button here, and instead of going on to chapter 10 like I planned, that we would launch into chapter 10 next week. Chapter 10 is considered to be the chapter of nations. It's the founding of nations, and I'll show you this real quick here in the minutes that we have left. Let me share my screen. I wanted to go back to this slide here. This is one that I put up, I think, the first week of our study in Genesis, just so that you can get a sense of the timings, right? So from creation to Abraham is about 2,500 years. So we are in that first 2,500 year period there. From creation to Abraham is about 2,500 years. And then from Abraham to Jesus is an additional 2,500 years. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the timing that we're talking about. This also helps to clarify that. So we believe that creation week was about 5,500 BC. The year of the flood was about 3,300 BC. Remember, BC moves forward to year zero, right? So it's kind of like the negative side of the number line moves forward towards year zero, which is towards the birth of Christ, which is supposed to be the demarcation between BC and AD. But we know that there's some inaccuracies created by the Gregorian monk that put our calendar system together, and that Jesus was born. Now here it says 2 BC, but it could be as early as 4 BC, so somewhere in that region there. That's why these years are approximate. The call of Abraham, actually Tower of Babel, let's look at that. So flood, 3,300 BC. Tower of Babel, 2,850 BC. Okay, so almost, what is that, 500 years? Almost 500 years, 450 years after the flood. Tower of Babel becomes an important feature for next week's study. Then the call of Abraham in 2091. That's pretty accurate. I think that it's, like I said, that's pretty approximate. The Exodus in 1446. Okay, Solomon crowned in 971, and then Jesus born in about 2 BC. So that gives you a sense of the timing of things. Oops. I showed this last week, but this shows the spread of the descendants of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Notice Shem is in magenta, Ham is in orange, and Japheth is in that greenish color. So you can kind of see how the people spread. And an important point here is Nimrod. He will become an important feature in our next study. And then I wanted to lastly share this with you. And I searched for a genealogy of Noah that was not an eye chart. And it's not possible. It's gonna be an eye chart. But you can see the text in red, the names in red, Noah, Shem, and then all those that follow. And this traces the genealogy of Noah all the way to the 12 tribes of Israel through Isaac and Jacob. Shem establishes, or shall we say, continues the righteous line of Seth all the way to Jesus Christ. So Shem and his descendants continue or establish the righteous line all the way from Seth to Jesus Christ. We have the 12 tribes, right? We can trace from Abraham to Boaz, Boaz to David, David to Jesus. Japheth and Ham. Interesting, if we go back to the map for just a moment. So Japheth, the descendants of Japheth, inhabited what we know of today as Russia and Ukraine, the Baltic, Eastern Europe, Germany, Europe, and the descendants of Ham actually populate or expand in the Middle East. And they populate today what we know as Egypt, Ethiopia, Arabia, Iraq, and Iran. So it's interesting to see how the being faithful to God's command to populate the planet, how people spread out from the descendants of Noah. All right, gentlemen, closing thoughts, comments?
Perry, weren't we told that we were sealed by the Holy Spirit? So wouldn't the Holy Spirit be the sign of the new covenant?
You know, Tom, that's a great question, great thought. I would say you're right that that's the sign. I mean, when you talk about when a person has the mark of God on them, they're filled with the Spirit, right? But I think the symbol, as opposed to the sign, the symbol is definitely the cross.
But here in the text, he's talking about signs, not symbols, right?
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about how do we split that hair? The difference between a sign and a symbol. What else?
Thanks for your work, Perry. Good stuff.
Well, Perry,
Yeah.
Perry, it's also very interesting just to see the this whole lineage of people. Where did you get some of that? That's huge information. My goodness, it's quite a study.
I am aided by J. Vernon McGee. I really use his Bible studies as sort of a basis for ours. And there is a passage that I wanted to read out of his study for the book, for chapter 10, which we're going to get to next week. But I'm going to close with this. He says, the Scythians, the Slavs, the Russians, the Bulgarians, the Bohemians, the Poles, the Slovaks, Croatians came from Magog. The Indians, the Iranic races, which are the Medes, the Persians, the Afghans, the Kurds, all came from Madai. let me throw this map back up on the screen so you can see here. All right, so let me start over again. While you're looking at this map, the Scythians, the Slavs, the Russians, Bulgarians, Bohemians, Poles, Slovaks, Croatians came from Magog. The Indians and the Iranic races, which are the Medes, the Persians, the Afghans, the Kurds, all came from Madai, or Madai, M-A-D-A-I. From Javan, we have the Greeks, the Romans, the Romance nationalities such as the French, Spanish, and the Portuguese, the Italians, etc. Coming from Tyrus are the Thryans, the Teutons, the Germans, and then from that we have the East Germanic and European races, the North Germanic and or Scandinavians, and the West Germanic, from which come High Germans and Low Germans. And then the Anglos and the Saxons and the Jutes, which are the English people. Again, it's just interesting to see. And most of us here in the United States, we come from that. We come from the Anglos, the Germans, the Germanic tribes, the Anglos, the Saxons, and the Jutes. So again, that's why Genesis is referred to as the Book of Origins. All right, gentlemen, please have a good rest of your week and go with God.
Thanks, Barry.
That's Barry.